Hi guys, Brain here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today, I wanted to dispel a very unhealthy mentality when it comes to this game that has existed for quite a long time in the DBD space, and it's especially mostly spouted by veterans. And that bad mentality is that there was at one point the good old days of Dead by Daylight. There was a point in time at which DBD was perfect or near perfect according to them. Usually they point to the years of 2017 and 2018 when referring to this, but essentially they kind of see that the game was perfect or near perfect in this zone, in this magical time period that they played through a long time ago. However, I want to poke holes in that kind of nostalgia glasses that everybody seems to wear towards old DBD, because often you can find something busted, unfun, and unpolished in the elder years of DBD. I always find this take so interesting to me because specifically in 2017, which is a year that a lot of people point to when they're talking about like DBD being perfect or near perfect, or things were better at this time in DBD, is that tiles used to be incredibly busted and overpowered for Survivor. There was just tons of setups that used to just have 2 or 3 safe vaults accompanied by a pallet, and even if the killer vaulted, it was super slow. So by the time they would come through the window, the survivor would be already going through the next window. Like I think a good example of this, if you've ever looked at Old Wretched Shop, you know how it has all the windows boarded up all up and down the actual shop itself. Those windows used to be open before a long time ago. Those windows used to be open, and the pallet that usually spawns on the backside, the really small path pallet that spawns on the backside, that used to spawn next to those windows. So essentially you could just vault in and out of those windows, and if you ever accidentally happened to mess up, even though it was really hard, you could just drop the pallet and still be okay. Even like Caltree used to have 2 vaults on it. Caltree used to have 2 window vaults, which is better because right now at least you can force the pallet side down, kick the pallet, make the tile very unsafe, but you can never get rid of a vault, so having the 2 vaults was better. It was just, and even then, like, Caltree didn't even exist in the sense of like Caltree now, because Caltree used to have like a little fence tied to each corner of the tile itself, so you really couldn't circumvent the vaults in any like meaningful way, because not only was it the rocks that make up the Caltree, but it was also a little fence off to the side, so you couldn't just like, you know, circle around the fence and hit someone. It was like too long to do that when the windows were really safe. And then it gets even worse, because you got to think about that, like, this is like 2017 DBD. A lot of the ways that killers function now in 2022 have come as a direct result of updates to their add-ons, to their base kit, and quite, you know, the game was in its first formative years, so quite literally none of that existed yet. Most of the characters were existing simply in their original form. So Trapper was way behind. Wraith was probably one of the worst characters in the game, if not outright the worst character in the game. Those characters just like really suffered. And there weren't a whole lot of killers in the game at that point, so to have 2 or 3 killers kind of be that aggressively bad is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. I think, like I said, I think a lot of players were around for that formative time. They're around for those beginning years of DBD, and they lived through them, so therefore they kind of just see them fondly because of their nostalgia glasses. But you got to understand that when you say something, like, it's usually somebody says it in my YouTube comments or somebody comes in my stream, they say, well, 2017 DBD was the best DBD. And then, you know what I do is I go, is that true? And then I go to look up stuff, and I go to search up old footage. I watch old streams from streamers that I knew were around back then, and I have fresh eyes. I don't have these nostalgia goggles on, so I'm seeing things like the Caltree double vault, there was the upstairs of the Ironworks used to have 3 vaults that unless you were like able to put a trap down as Trapper, like, they were just like, you just kind of had to eat that. I saw somebody as Wraith try to like mind game that triple vault upstairs in the Ironworks like a bajillion times, and that was not working. The Claudette just waited and vaulted and waited and vaulted. Although that may have been 2016 DBD, that one, because I didn't check the date. I just saw 4 or 5 years ago, and I was like, that's around that time. But this, in case in point being that I look at that stuff, I look at it like with fresh eyes, and I go, wow, that's dumb. That looks frustrating. That looks painful. If that was in the game right now, That would be so annoying and so frustrating to deal with. And I think it's like either stuff like that like people just kind of like willingly forget, or they just ignore it because maybe they liked it better that way. It's clear from the early years of DBD that they didn't care much for the balance of the game. And it was just kind of like, I don't know, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what works. Because if you don't know this, I'm going to tell you now, the devs never planned for DBD to be their main game, their big cash cow. They just kind of were making it for fun. And they were going to make it and then move on to other projects, but DBD got wildly popular. So they kind of ended up with like this golden goose that they didn't even ask for. So I feel like a lot of those formative years were just kind of throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. And fairness kind of seemed to be a backseat while they tried to just kind of like figure out what they wanted to do with this golden goose that they hadn't anticipated even having in the first place. So when I am in this situation and I hear all these people saying, well, this isn't like the good old days of DBD, like, why does that matter? Who cares? Who cares if somebody like has nostalgia glasses for this specific section of DBD? It matters to me because it's not just, oh, you're having happiness for this part of the game. Like, I have a lot of happiness for, like, you know, like the chapter I joined in, which was the Silent Hill chapter. Like, that, I feel like that has a lot to do with why Midwich is probably my favorite map aesthetically to play on, because it's like this, it looks good objectively. I do think so. But like, that was like some of the first matches of DBD I ever played was on that map, because that was the brand new map at the time. So I was like, I feel like I have a lot of like, you know, biased connection to that map. But a lot of these nostalgia and a lot of these biases often become incredibly negative, because DBD in modern times is changing up a lot of things. Obviously, with the newest mid chapter that's coming, they're changing up quite a lot. But over time, they have changed so much about this game. And that's because now that they kind of have an idea of what they want DBD to look like, they aren't doing as much of the throwing it to the wall and seeing if it sticks. They're trying to focus more on fairness and trying to make things a little more balanced. And I think a lot of negativity when it comes to these new changes comes from these nostalgia goggles. It comes from this place of, well, DBD was better back then. And I have to tell you that if you're wanting to say that from a place of objectivity, that's just not it. It's just not true. If you want to say that from a place of objectivity, that's just not factual. It was a mixed bag, just like most of the game's history has been. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, is when people say like, well, these were the good old days of DBD. DBD was better back then. If DBD was better in 2017 and DBD was the best in 2017, you got to ask, for whom was it the best in 2017? And that's the question I want you to ask every single time somebody brings up this nostalgia goggle statement of the good old days of DBD, or DBD was perfect back then. Ask them, DBD was the best for whom back then? DBD was perfect for whom back then? Because for a lot of people, they liked they see no problem with like the wretched shop windows all being open and having a pal there, because they get to just, you know, dunk on the killers and just call it a day, right? And obviously there was a lot of dumb stuff with like Insta-Saw Billy that existed back then, where they're like, oh, that's fine, we can just keep that. Those were the good days. A lot of DBD players kind of like really love just exploiting things and getting as much results for as little as possible. But that sounds like I'm starting another video there. Maybe I'll do that. But I feel like that's where a lot of this, the good old days and things were better back then statements come from, is because there was something back there that they could exploit, that they could use, something that was cozy to them. Specifically, that was a subjective thing that they liked that made their experience better, and not so much that it was objectively good for the game or the game's health. So I'll leave you with this again. If somebody says the good old days of DBD were 2017, ask them, the good old days of DBD for who? So that's it for today's video, friends. Thank you so much for watching. Do you think that the good old days statement for DBD is nostalgic, or do you really think that there was some point in DBD's time where the game was nearly perfect? Let me know down in the comments below. But other than that, it's gonna be it for today's video, friends. I do upload daily though, so hopefully I will see you tomorrow. But if I don't, I will see you. Oh, and I see you. Goodbye.